What if I told you the promises you always hear read in meetings are not the only promises made in the big book from doing the 12-step work? In this video, I'm going to share with you exactly what's promised to you through working the 12 steps, and you're going to be surprised by the last one. Subscribe to the channel if you're in the addiction recovery community, and if you learn anything new, or if you don't like anything I say, let me know in the comments. And I'm going to prelude this video by letting you know I'm not claiming to be any part of any fellowship, I'm just reading from the big book. So some of these promises you may have already experienced, and some of these may cause you to either go back and do a step again, or possibly get to work on getting the steps done. So welcome to the AA Promises, Experiencing the Step Work. The promises we always hear read in the meetings should be universally known as the 9th step promises. They are found on pages 83 and 84 of the big book and are specifically talking about working the 9th step amends. We will get to them later on in the video and really break down what they mean. But first, let's talk about some of the other steps that have promises attached to them in this book. Like step 2, when we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. This is the step where atheists and agnostics begin to fall off, scoffing at the thought of having to believe in a power greater than themselves. But check out this promise on page 46 in regards to this step. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. And this is saying that no matter what your beliefs are, if you lay aside the prejudice of saying, God doesn't exist, I know it, I know all things, you have the opportunity to begin to get results by working spiritual steps and starting to live the spiritual practices within this book. The promise made about the second step is just this: as soon as you believe or are even willing to believe in a power greater than yourself, you are on your way, and the simple idea is enough to build an effective spiritual structure and life. Now for step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. The promises attached to this step are on page 63 and read, when we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, He provided what we needed if we kept close to Him and performed His work well. And I've talked to my sponsees about this specific line right here because it doesn't say that He's going to supply our money and supply our relationship and supply our job. He's going to supply our needs. And that's all encompassing. That's talking about everything in our life. And that's if we kept close to Him and performed His work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of His presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. Those are promises attached to step 3 by making the decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. What that means is these promises that we're continually hearing read within the meetings, there's so much more attached to doing the work at every single step. So let's move on to step 4. And now the step 4 promises are happening while we are taking inventory and when we finish the inventory. And this is the searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. On page 68, some of the promises attached to this step read right here. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. Now, what we're learning from Him is all the stuff that we're writing down in our inventory, all the character defects, the fears we have, and the way that we are treating other people and seeing other people with our perspective. That's all the calamity. That's all the things that didn't work, the unmanageability in our lives that didn't really necessarily have anything to do with the alcohol or the drugs, but had to do with our thinking. And just as much as we are able to allow Him to show us how to be, and we work towards that ideal, He allows us and shows us how to have serenity, have peace, understand what we're in control of and what we're not, give the things we're not in control of up to God, and have the courage to take action on the things we are in control of. And now for step 5, after we admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And we find these promises on page 75, right in the middle of the page. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. And this was 100% my experience. I remember on day 25, I went up and did my 5th step with my sponsor on the rims in Billings, Montana. And in the morning, and that time I didn't have like that crazy spiritual experience that day. But then in the morning, my sponsor came and picked me up in his 1983 Mailman Jeep at 6:30 in the morning from the Sober Living House. We were on our way to go start the 6th and 7th step. I'm looking over at this beautiful sunrise, and for the first time in my life since I was 12 years old, I had no desire to drink or use. Before that moment, I had this belief that maybe this is gonna happen, maybe this is gonna work, but I always thought about the next time I was gonna use drugs. But then after doing the 5th step, and exactly like in this promise right here, I had an experience, a spiritual experience. And I started crying and I looked at Aaron and I said, Aaron, thank you so much. And I actually had the experience of the desire to use being taken from me, and it hasn't come back. And that's a promise from this work and from doing it as if your life depends on it. And now for the 9th step promises found on pages 83 and 84 that are specifically talking about what happens after doing steps 1 through 8 thoroughly and doing the amends with the people in our 8th step list. And these are the ones we all know that are read in all the meetings. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. And that was my experience through the amends list. I remember having that sense of accomplishment and of peace and just being able to make amends with people with no fear. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. And what does the word new mean? The word new means it hasn't happened before, it's new. A new freedom and a new happiness that we haven't experienced before, kind of like my experience in the 5th step. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Have any of you ever had something happen in the past that you wish that you could just never have to tell anybody, any stories that you didn't want to get out? Well, we don't even fear that anymore. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. So we'll understand what it means to make choices on what we're in control of and what we're not, have the courage to do the things we're in control of, and the serenity to let God take care of the rest. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. This is literally the message of Recovered on Purpose. Each and every one of you watching this right now, there is someone out there struggling that needs your story, that needs your recovery, and needs you out there living this life in recovery. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. And that's talking specifically about that God consciousness coming into our mind. When we're coming into situations, we will intuitively know, because we're connected with God, what we're supposed to do in that moment. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. These are promises that are attached to doing the amends. And a problem that I see a lot within our fellowships, right? And I'm not necessarily a member of any fellowship, but something I see a lot are, newcomers aren't taught what this thing is actually talking about. They're not taught what the actual promises of this program are, and they're not getting a sponsor and doing the steps. So they think that 90 days in, when they've gotten a job and they've maybe gotten a sober living room and things like that. They haven't really worked the steps, but they think that those are the promises. But these promises are talking about a new freedom and a new happiness that we've never experienced before. It's not a job that we've had before and we got back. It's a new freedom and a new happiness. And it only happens through working these steps. And now the step 10 promises. As we continue to take personal inventory, and when wrong, we promptly admit it. And these are found on page 84, right below the 9th step promises. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. And I had this exact experience. It was crazy. I remember in my first 60 or 90 days, I was working the 10th step. I had finished my 9th step, and I was sitting at a family function. And for the first time, somebody sat down next to me with a beer. And I remember, and I know nobody else really understands this except an alcoholic or an addict, but when they sat down with this beer, this glass of beer, I remember studying it. And I was staring at this beer and I was looking deep at it and thinking about it. And I wasn't thinking about wanting to drink it, but I just wanted to know why it was that I didn't. And then I imagined taking a drink of it and I felt it burning me, literally burning me. Just like this promise is right here. We recoil from it as from a hot flame. And that's saying that we're no longer fighting this thing. We're no longer looking at it like, oh, I don't want to drink it anymore. But we have this experience where it's this different entity than it ever was. It doesn't have that same power over us. We react sanely and normally, and we'll find that this has happened automatically. And by happening automatically, that means it just happens through doing this work at some point. You're not going to be the one that says, I'm not going to be thinking about drinking anymore. I'm going to recoil from it as from a hot flame. No, just by doing the work, by connecting with God, working with a sponsor, and in the 10th step somewhere, at some point, it's going to happen automatically, where you recognize that alcohol and drugs no longer have the same pull they used to have. Now, the 11th step promises, while we seek through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, they're going to be found on page 87. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. And this is 100% my experience, and it's incredible because it's just happened maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. A sponsee began having this incredible spiritual experience, and she hit me up and she was like, oh my gosh, it's like God is right here. This person said this to me, and it was right what I was just talking about. And then I went to church and this happened, and she's having this profound spiritual experience. And I'm listening and I'm like, it's interesting because that's life now. That's how I experience life now, because God is always here. I'm always talking with him, and these kinds of things just show up now. It's a way of living. It's normal to me. And I'm just sitting listening to her and I'm like, man, I'm so glad you're having this experience. It's an incredible one. And I remember going back to when I was finding sobriety, when I was finding recovery, and those experiences, they meant so much to me. And while working with other people, like we're going to talk about in the next step promises, while working with them, you begin to go back and you begin to have these experiences again vicariously through your sponsees. And the 12th step is full of promises as we carry the message to other addicts and alcoholics, like on page 89. At the beginning of Working with Others, where it promises, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. So this promises that as we work the 12th step and we work with other people one-on-one, that it will ensure immunity from drinking and drugging. And that's where I see a lot of people fall off. And that's my first question, especially when people had a significant amount of time in recovery and they relapse. I ask, how many sponsees do you have? How many sponsees did you have? How many people were you working with at that time? That's a promise. If you're working the 12th step, it's sure to keep you immune to drinking and drugging. And further down the page, It promises an experience I know and preach every chance I get, because it's talking about when you're working with somebody one-on-one. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. I don't know how many a host is, but sounds good to me. This is an experience you must not miss. This is a promise. As you're working this step work, the 12 steps, you're gonna be making a new fellowship around you. You know, and I'm not talking specifically about the meetings. I'm not talking about membership in any specific fellowship. But if you are out to help addicts, if you are out to do work with them and help them for free and for fun, just for that spiritual experience between two people, you will never find something that makes you feel more fulfilled in life. I've been able to do so many things in my recovery. I've been able to grow businesses, to become an author, to do all these things. And I can tell you the most fulfilling moments in my recovery have been working one-on-one with somebody else that is trying to find recovery, who has a breakthrough with God right in front of me. Until next time, enjoy the step work, get your butt out there and help some addicts, and keep living Recovered on Purpose.